Good afternoon. I am Zev Elef, president of Gratz College, and welcome to the 2025 Arnold and Esther Tuzman Memorial Holocaust Teach-In. It always is, but this one is a milestone program at Gratz College, synergizing the myriad magnificent initiatives taken up by my colleagues. The program is the result of the creative and administrative brilliance of Eyal Feinberg, Mindy Blechman, and a host of my wonderful Gratz fellow staff members. There's much that goes into this event, from IT to design. It's always stellar, and it's always something new. This afternoon, we will learn from women, men, and machines who are thinking diligently and deeply about the values and ideas generated from the atrocities of the Holocaust. Together, we will explore film, virtual reality, interactive media, and new databases and repositories powered by artificial intelligence. Some of this, Gratz College has drawn from its own exciting work. This includes the Grazel digital platform and the Elie Wiesel archive and the Dimensions of Testimony exhibit installed over there in the lobby. The technology enables us to dialogue with Holocaust survivors to ask them timely and timeless questions about their experiences during the Shoah. Other parts are the products of colleagues developed in other leading centers of Holocaust education. I hasten to welcome filmmaker Winikur and other wonderful meaning makers who have joined us to teach us today. They are Gratz's continued partners in our work to improve this very broken world. Together, this sacred synergy represents the very best of our collective wisdom. Consider today's theme: who will bear witness? The future of Holocaust education through technology. Technology is always a moving target. Technology is a fleeting thing. What stands out as path-breaking in our moment invariably becomes outmoded tomorrow. Perhaps then, more important is the introduction that new technology offers us that provokes us to reassess our work and answer everlasting questions in new fundamental ways. Who will bear witness? How will we do it? Technology challenges us to think big about important topics, important subjects. 40 years ago, for example, Philadelphia convened a major conference of the Assembly of the American Gathering of Jewish Holocaust Survivors. 5,000 Holocaust survivors and children of survivors waited in a very long line to log themselves and their stories into a then innovative computer registry. Like us, this huge gathering asked, who will bear witness? In his major lecture at that 1985 program, Elie Wiesel delivered a message to the second generation, declaring that the new SQL database represented a baton exchange to a new generation of witness curators. Noteworthy, one of the major sponsors for that local initiative were Arnold and Esther Tuzman. Of course, our 21st century technology surpasses that kind founded the Assembly in 1985. Still, we find ourselves asking the same questions. We measure our own capacity to make meaning based on the development and the exciting technologies and instruments to support Holocaust education. The Tuzman Teach-In truly has incubated Gratz College's commitment to Holocaust education. It has energized and assisted to propel us to become the world's largest graduate program in Holocaust and genocide studies. Our thoughtful students are leading K-12 educators, nonprofit executives, museum directors, and college professors in the United States, Israel, and in Europe. Our annual impact report captures their books, podcasts, conference presentations that throw new light on Holocaust studies. Their database crunching undergirds the latest reporting in ADL surveys and shapes public opinion. More recently, our strong station atop Holocaust education has catalyzed Gratz to establish the first graduate program in anti-Semitism studies. The all-star students enrolled in this program, many of them here today, sit on advisory boards for think tanks, serve in management positions at foundations and public policy agencies. They're teachers, curriculum designers, and overall shapers of the type of education that we ought to offer to our children and to our grandchildren. Before entering this theater, you encountered the stunning samples drawn from the Elie Wiesel archive, part of the forthcoming Gratz digital platform. Wiesel's son, Alicia, headlined the most recent Tuzman teaching. Through that experience and others, Alicia and his late mother, Marion, selected Gratz College as the digital home of the Wiesel archives. The Gratz platform is set to become the principal content provider of Gratz's high-powered graduate degree programs. We will continue to collect more assets and more wisdom. This will elevate the student experience in Holocaust studies, in anti-Semitism studies, in human rights, all degree programs, path-breaking ones at Gratz College. Students in our newly created Jewish Studies Executive PhD program and the hundreds of public school teachers in our education program will gain mastery of its inner workings, of Gratzel's inner workings, as an intentional ripple effect, then to teach their students how to use this incredible platform. Gratz's urgent work has placed the college in very good stead. This labor will continue in Gratz's new headquarters in Ballackinwood and in our new site in nearby Jenkintown. Construction on the Gratz, what we're calling the Gratz Common Space on the main line, will start in June. We're calling it a common space that is meant for everyone, to bridge Jewish tradition with modern perspective and sensibilities, and to create a vibrant home for all who seek connection, learning, and shared experiences. It will be a place for public programs, art displays, academic conferences, coffee dates, and wine tastings. It will be a site for young people to screen important films, for adults to utilize as a co-working area, for anyone with some available time to grab a pastry and a mochaccino and attend a class with a remarkable teacher. As we have done in Melrose Park, we'll bring public school students to learn about the Holocaust through our new technologies. There's more work to be done, but we are well on our way, set to open in early 2026, having secured $4.5 million of a $6 million capital campaign. I hasten to thank Gratz's chair of the Board of Governors, David Brower, an architect by training and a patient visionary by temperament. His leadership and presence here today is my good fortune. Gratz will continue as a pillar of the Old York Road corridor, of course. For 35 years, you, our partners and fellow learners, have supported Gratz College. Some of your names are embossed on the bronze plates on our walls behind you. All of you are etched into our hearts. This afternoon's program signals your devotion. I extend my gratitude to the many donors and participants who support this marquee teaching. Particularly, I thank the extended Tuzman family. They continue to serve as the inspired stewards of their parents' legacy for Holocaust education and much, much more. Their guidance and friendship are tributes to their kindness and boundless generosity. Including today's, there are still a number of exciting programs slated to run in this Gratz College and Newman building in Melrose Park. We depart here in a few months with a mission to redouble our efforts after our short move up just a couple of blocks up the road. I am grateful to the Lindy family for making space for us at Jenkintown's Piazza on the square. Finally, Gratz's faculty and our Board of Governors found it fitting to introduce one more dimension, a wrinkle, to this year's Tuzman teaching. It seemed a worthy opportunity to acknowledge and celebrate one of Gratz's greatest champions, Marty Tuzman. Marty continues to champion Holocaust education in the greater Philadelphia community. In public and private spaces, his is a strong voice in combating anti-Semitism and other heinous bigotries. He is a bridge builder for faith-based communities and a healer of people in need, particularly within our Jewish community and its attendant agencies. At Gratz College, Marty is the lodestar for the biennial Holocaust teach-in and a consummate steward of our mission to advance education and Jewish wisdom. Over the past 18 months of Gratz's growth, significant growth, and transition, Marty Tuzman has been a mentor to me and a dear friend, and when needed, a gentle critic. It's needed. This is a craft refined by decades of leadership. Marty has served many nonprofit boards and charities aimed at improving our region. Now as ever, Marty is engaged in workforce development to foster economic opportunities here in Philadelphia. He manifests Gratz's mission to apply Jewish wisdom within and without our faith community. Marty offers his friends a larger-than-life take on humanity and loving kindness. His common sense guidance is far from common. So on behalf of Gratz College's faculty, and by the authority vested in me by the Commonwealth of, I have to say this, of Pennsylvania, it's not official if I don't, granted by the Board of Governors of Gratz College by Act of Legislature, 1849, I do hereby confer upon you, Martin Tuzman, the degree of Doctor of Hebrew Letters, honoris causa. Step forward. We will do this. We are going to.
He said so dapper.
So, for the very first time, therefore, I'm delighted to introduce at the Tuzman Teach-In, Dr. Marty Tuzman.
Wow. I actually wonder, I've been playing with the new name. This is fine. He wondered if I wanted to take it off. No, I'm going to wear this from now on. It's waterproof, right, for the shower? I've been playing with the new name, and I've already got some resistance from my kids as to whether they would call me Dr. Marty or Dr. Dad. But I play a few roles, and one of them is Reb Mordechai. So I'm thinking maybe Reb Dr. Mordechai. You know, how's that sound? There you go. Yeah, okay, good. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be here. Shachianu, it takes a lot to be here. It takes a lot for all of us to make time in the day to bring our friends, to invite the many people in our lives to tune in online, and to all the many online. Shachianu, it's wonderful to all be together. It's been a labor of love to work with Gratz, to work with Zev and Ayal and the team, to help preserve and strengthen great programs and community and the future for Gratz that we've heard Zev address so fully, and yet so much to come. Tzedakah, charity, comes in so many forms, and to be able to step up at critical times and give the best of ourselves for the best of others is a gift for the giver and a gift for the receiver. And the ability that I've just enjoyed in doing that comes in big ways, like the work here with Gratz, or small ways, or the way we treat the person around us, the people we meet in the street. And it's a matter of giving. And if you give, there's the receiving and the giving and the blessing where you meet. I'm so honored and so grateful to receive this distinction today. And I think of my mother being so proud to now have a Jewish doctor in the family. I'm pleased to see so many wonderful faces in the room today, and I feel like I'm going to get distracted if I keep looking around and smiling at Janet or somebody else in the room. And know that there are so many more online and many places around the world. We've had very important morning programs, including a powerful tour of Auschwitz, virtual tour. Have an incredible, powerful day ahead between our wonderful keynote speaker, my buddy at Temple, my alma mater as well, Ken Winikur, and all our wonderful, terrific guest speakers, some of whom I've known for many, many, many years. Hine matov umanayim, shevet achim gam yachad. How wonderful, behold, how wonderful it is for all of us, brothers and sisters, to sit together in one tent. We're here today in one tent in very important discussion and in very important time. Who will bear witness? As I've contemplated this question over the last many weeks, the depth of its meaning has grown profoundly for me. How do we bear witness? Who is the we that bears witness? Are we solo in the act of contemplation? Do we create community around that as we do here today? Do we create common understanding about what we witness, what it means, and where we go with what we see? What do we do with what we witness? How does it call us to action and create a community of action? I bear witness to the Holocaust every day in my genes and DNA, surely in my personality and my actions. And I know it always resides under my skin. I grew up on a chicken farm in South Jersey, and my father didn't read me Dr. Seuss books. He often told me Nazi stories. I regularly dreamt that the Nazis had arrived on the chicken farm with, I didn't know if I'd see a blimp, a logo on the blimp, but a blimp that would go around our chicken farm in my dream, 11 acres. And I would run from chicken coop to chicken coop to hang out to be under the eave, not knowing if they would see me there. And they would find me and I would awake from my nightmare. Caution and vigilance remains at my core. To me, it is a critical part of remembering the Holocaust. Caution and vigilance. I cried for weeks as I witnessed the invasion of the Ukraine. It brought all of the Holocaust, all I had learned, and all of my parents' stories right in front of me in our family TV room. It was excruciating to see the images as I thought of all those that passed in silence in the Holocaust, with the world not bearing witness, and barely a journalist, and no broadcasts. Of course, not much action or reaction from the world. And then shortly thereafter, we all witnessed October 7th. And again, the trauma that we experienced was devastating. And now we witness Gaza, and no matter the politics, blood is red, families losing homes and children is devastating. And all the hostages, alive or dead, have still not returned. And all the suffering continues. We live in incredible and difficult times where we even challenge the very concept of bearing witness. We've come to learn new words, alternative facts, fake news, post-fact society, post-truth society, a time in which, worse than ever, we cannot agree on what is real. It's too easy to sit in silos of truth or podcasts of every flavor. And these alternative facts, or questioning what we even experience, leaves us more polarized than ever. And if I may, to give an example, just of the experiences of this week, did we really have a security breach? Were there really high-level folks involved in that breach in an unsafe channel for communication? Many would not even acknowledge their own names, but their initials were included. Should it not have happened? Just yesterday, all the dialogue, or a day or two ago, the dialogue reversed among the high-level intelligence people, refuting that there was a breach and that the medium used was the best medium to be used and should be used from now on. In today's political environment, the strategy is to attack the source of the fact rather than acknowledge or agree on what was witnessed. It's that Jeffrey Goldberg is really a terrible journalist. And the Atlantic magazine is a dying magazine that nobody wants to read. If you don't like what's exposed, it's all too common to attack its very reality and align your party around what you wish to believe. Today, we watch the anti-Semitism on campuses and Jews around the world afraid to wear a Jewish star around their neck and need layers of security at all Jewish events. We watched Charlottesville. Were there good people on both sides? Today, we watch countless attacks on protesters and immigrants, whether they have legal status or whether they've committed crimes, rounded up, handcuffed by men in masks, and jailed or missing or deported. We watch books and subjects and words and organizations banned and targeted. Today, we see movement in many libraries and schools and states to not allow discussion on race or slavery or the Holocaust, because these realities are uncomfortable to some. We watch attacks on major news organizations who feel forced to concede and settle and struggle to maintain principles. Law firms that provide bedrock pro bono support for nonprofits are now victims of retribution and recede from assisting nonprofits in critical legal work. Sadly, we watch troubling times. Today, we watch revenge attacks on judges and the legal system that defends the innocent till proven guilty, or defends the laws of our nation. And now many retreat in fear. We watch the lawyer from a major law firm, Paul Weiss, who negotiated as he feared the tremendous loss to his company that he's responsible for. About 2,500 lawyers and many more they employed, and whose income and families depended on him. And I considered the managing partner's actions and dilemma. I was really angry. But it reminded me of how many families or children, like my mother's family, were given up or sold out in the Holocaust, and the terrible decisions many had to make of who to sacrifice in order to survive. I consumed my teen years reading as much as I could on the rise and fall of the Third Reich, as the world watched laws that persecuted the others and roundups of unwanted citizens and books burned, and those marginal ones in society. The world bore witness. And at this time, the famous quote from a German philosopher, Martin Niemöller, resonates with fright. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. I pray that we witness vigilantly. I pray that we don't slip further down a scary slope. I pray we learn how to react and act vigilantly and prudently. And we celebrate those who bear witness and who bring that to our eyes to look at the difficult truths that we experience. Please spend time today or reach out to arrange time with Gratz to spend quiet time and personal interactive time with the holograms. I spent a lot of time with Pinchas and Edith the other day. I spent time this week with Pinchas Zuckerman in the hologram, and I asked him what we should learn and how to avoid repeating the Holocaust, and he answered the following. The most important lesson of the Holocaust is that the world is a very dangerous place, and we have to be on guard continuously against inequity, because it is part of our being, and we have to fight it on a continuous basis. We have to try to eradicate all kinds of racialism, all kinds of prejudice, and I think that should be the lesson, because by looking at what happened in the Holocaust, we should see what the world can become if it continues being like that. We are witnessing difficult times today. We are guided by the wisdom of Pinchas and so many that preceded us and surround us today. I encourage you to visit also the most amazing display of the life and work of Elie Wiesel. The last plaque of the display reads in his words, "Some students ask me, what will happen when the survivors will be gone?" The teacher in me says to my students, just think, perhaps you are the only hope I have. Fulfill it. We are all here today as that hope. Gratz's job is to teach and create hope. Thank you for all your work now and all the work to be done, all of us in any and every capacity we have. And thank you, Gratz, for this wonderful honor.
I would, but Eileen would have my head. We have a really, really exciting program. It already began this morning for many of our educators here in the room. And for our major program, I am really delighted to call up my colleague, Dr. Eyal Feinberg, who is the director of our Holocaust Studies and Human Rights Center, the field leader in Holocaust anti-Semitism studies the world over. Eyal serves as professor of political science and anti-Semitism studies. It is the first faculty position in the world. We don't talk about this enough. Gratz hired Eyal Feinberg to serve as the very first researcher in American anti-Semitism studies. It is part of this program, is a result of his creativity. And Eyal, please come here to introduce our program today.
How are we doing, everyone? Good, good, great. Thank you. Thank you all very, very much for coming to Gratz College for the Arnold and Esther Tuzman Memorial Holocaust Teach-In. I have to first and foremost throw out the top of my remarks because I'm trying to find, there's Dr. Marty. See, I live in the South and we go by doctor, title, whatever it is, and then first name. So Dr. Marty, it's going to be from now on. That was a remarkable speech that you provided all of us. In the lead up to this, I was chatting. I've been learning from Marty now for Dr. Marty, sorry, for the last year and a half. And we were discussing very broadly some of what might be included in his remarks. And I kept saying, Marty, just send me a draft over and I'll take a look at it. And Marty never did. And now I can't take any credit for what you just shared with everybody, and I'm devastated, and I will make up for it on the tennis court. So watch out. Our theme this year is Who Will Bear Witness? The Future of Holocaust Education Through Technology. This challenges us to consider how we will carry forward the vital lessons of Holocaust survivors and eyewitnesses as they become fewer each day. As the proud director of the world's largest and, dare I say, most impactful Holocaust and Genocide Studies program, here at Gratz College, I want to reiterate that addressing this question is very much at the core of our educational mission. And it's why I'm especially excited for our unparalleled programming that we're going to offer today. It's my distinct honor to introduce today's keynote speaker, Ken Winikur. With over a decade of distinguished experience creating impactful media content for Holocaust institutions, Ken has been at the forefront of shaping how history is communicated to new generations. His innovative approaches to harness the power of emerging technologies, from compelling films to immersive virtual reality, have transformed how we think about Holocaust education. I'm also happy to share that Ken has a deep Philadelphia connection, earning his MFA from Temple University. So welcome back, Ken. Earlier today, I got to chat with Ken and I learned in true Greater Philadelphia Jewish geography fashion that we went to the same middle school at Pennsbury, Charles Bay Middle School. We both have the same feelings about that middle school. And that we grew up in childhood homes about a mile from each other in Yardley, Pennsylvania. So amazing, amazing that we have that connection and the impact that the Philadelphia Jewish community is having in this space. It's great. Since Ken started Winikur Productions in 2009, he has produced media for a range of venues and exhibits, including the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center, the Holocaust and Humanities Center in Cincinnati, the Museum of Jewish Heritage, a living memorial for the Holocaust, among others. Recently, he was creative director for the immersive film for the Verona Band of Mission Indians Cultural Center. One of Ken's acclaimed films, A Promise to Remember, features the story of Holocaust survivor David Schechter and has been offered nationally to public television stations for the past 6 years. Ken created the media for Auschwitz, not long ago, not far away, an exhibit which has been viewed by over 2 million visitors worldwide. He has been part of virtual reality films featuring Holocaust survivors filmed in Auschwitz in the Ukraine that are part of permanent exhibits at the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center, along with projects using the latest technology, including Dimensions and Testimony, experiences by the USC Shoah Foundation. As you've heard, as maybe you've seen, and certainly what I hope you will be able to see throughout the day, Gratz is a proud recipient of the Dimensions and Testimony technology. We are going to use this to leverage our continued advancement of Holocaust education in the greater Philadelphia area and beyond. Please make time, please, to explore this exciting technology while we have it housed here, but also when we bring it to our new campus in Bala Cynwyd, where it will be housed in a world-class education space. Today, Ken will lead us on an insightful exploration into the evolving landscape of Holocaust remembrance. Through his work, he has observed firsthand the shift in visitor expectations, the delicate balance between experience and education, and the complex ethical questions surrounding the phenomena known as dark tourism. We are uniquely privileged to have him share this expertise and his vision on the future of Holocaust in education, especially in our increasingly digital world. Please, your warmest welcome for my colleague and now new friend, Ken Winikur.
I'm bringing Ayal with me as my hype man wherever I go now. All right, let me turn this on. Thank you, Zev, Ayal, Mindy, for having me here today. Dr. Marty, I vote for Dr. Marty as well. Thank you, sir, for your work and your generosity in making this all possible. And what a speech. That's a tough act to follow, man. I am speaking to you today as a filmmaker. I am not a historian, an educator, or an executive director of an institution. I've been making films for Holocaust museums for over 15 years and films about Israel for longer. My talk today will reflect both the changes in technology and filmmaking techniques and what I believe are goals of museums that I've worked for. I will also speak to what I see as emerging trends and then finally my hopes for the future. None of the projects that I will show today are the work of just me. I'm very lucky to have an extremely talented and dedicated creative team that I work with and to have worked with many talented and dedicated professionals in their areas of expertise. I want to position my talk today with the idea that museums operate within their own contemporary moments. Their interpretation can help visitors not only understand the past, but understand the present and possibly the future. I would also like to frame my presentation to you today with the notion that we are in a new era, a post-October 7th era, a moment marked by the horrific attack by Hamas against innocent civilians, the subsequent protests against the state of Israel that we have all seen, and the campaign by the state of Israel against the Palestinians living in Gaza, and the growing anti-democratic movements, both here and around the world. Holocaust museums and others need to speak to this moment in some way, and the message might challenge fundamental tensions in Holocaust education, including teaching about historical anti-Semitism and addressing the modern state of Israel. All right, so I am a Philly boy, and proof is in the fact that this is my mama. I had to explain to somebody when I was practicing my talk what a mom was, in case anybody doesn't know. This is my mother's mother, and she lived not far from where we are and went to KI. This is a photo of my mom in 1937. She's the youngest of 10 children and the only one born in the United States. She was born in Philadelphia and grew up on the corner of 4th and Catherine Streets. She was an amazing chef and storyteller and was a real character. She never, however, spoke of this photo. In fact, I never saw this photo until after she died, when the album was passed along to my mother, who gave it to me. Here, she's 25 years old. 2 years after the taking of this photo, she'll get married. But right now, she's on a vacation to Europe. The framing is clearly intentional. She chose to have the Nazi flag behind her. I've never been able to fully unwind the reason why. Perhaps she was naive, not realizing how bad things would truly get. By the taking of this image, the Nuremberg laws have happened. The Olympics have happened. And in my mind, Buchenwald has just opened. Or does she see herself as immune to what is coming, something that she might think could never happen in America, her home? Or does she think neither of these things? Perhaps she believes in humanity and that those who are in power will come to their senses, that people are innately good and that they would never follow the ravings of a madman, that she will wake up one day and the fever gripping Germany and the other autocratic movements happening around the world will break. This is my mom's oldest sister, Olga. The story goes that Olga married well, very well. She moved from then Poland, now Ukraine, to Berlin and lived in a large home with all the trappings of wealth. Olga had one daughter, Annette. Annette was a young woman, married, and was more willing to take the Nazis at their word. One day, she packed up a small suitcase for the weekend, locked her front door, and pregnant, left for the UK, where she lived out the war. She never went back to Germany. Olga refused to leave until the only way out was east. She would end up going to Lithuania. I don't think I need to tell you what happened next, but she was never heard from again. This is me at the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College down the road. I never really heard these stories growing up. There were others about my Aunt Lily who smuggled diamonds out of Germany. I heard stories about my grandfather, who was not accepted as an engineering student at Penn because he was Jewish. And at that time, there were quotas on how many Jews would be allowed into the program. But I never heard about Nazi Germany or Olga or Annette. Growing up, I rarely ever stepped foot in a synagogue or knew much about Judaism. I described my childhood as totally secular, except for the fact that I didn't know anyone who wasn't Jewish. I went to public schools, so of course I knew non-Jews, but all our family friends, all of my friends, all of the people we socialized with were all Jews. Looking back, it seems that our collective history was passed down to us in all those small ways that don't need language, and that only socializing with other Jews was some legacy of protection. I was always interested in filmmaking and media. In high school, a friend and I were making films with a children's toy that recorded images on audio cassettes. The Pixel Vision, here, I get to use this pointer, the Pixel Vision 2000. I studied English literature in college, and I went on to get an MFA at Temple, go TU. And much of my work focused on Judaism in some form, either my Jewish identity, Jewish folklore, or a feature-length documentary about a moshav, a communal farming village in Israel. I lived in Israel for a year producing this documentary. It was during the Second Intifada, a particularly violent time that in hindsight was the end of the Oslo Accords and was the beginning of October 7th. I would go on to make a feature-length documentary, the last one here, about a progressive pro-Israel lobby group, J Street, The Art of the Possible, that tracked them through Obama's first term. We kind of crossed paths with Jeffrey Goldberg a little bit during that project, and I can say the Trump administration picked the wrong dude to mess with on that one. So the work that I'll share with you is not just projects that we've worked on. These are things that I care deeply about and that I have been thinking about on a personal level for some time. I moved from Philadelphia to Boston and got a job at a firm who made media for museums. I had no idea that this was an actual job. I joined them with an interest in doing broadcast and long-form documentary work. I had just finished a History Channel special on the spear of Christ, a mythical object that was said to have magical powers. There was even rumors that the third Raiders of the Lost Ark film would be about this object because none other than Hitler was said to have wanted it. My second son was born, and I was taking some time off when they called me about a proposal for a new museum being opened. That museum was the Illinois Holocaust Museum. We won the project and undertook the production of 20+ films and 2 digital interactive experiences, which were still relatively new at the time, and the museum would eventually open in 2009. I was very fortunate to work with Michael Berenbaum and Yitzhak Mays. Michael Berenbaum was the project manager for the creation of the United States Holocaust Memorial and Museum, and is a world-renowned historian and author about the Holocaust. He's a great mentor of mine, and I feel very privileged to have worked with and learned from him on this and other projects. Yitzhak Mays was the executive director of Yad Vashem and curator at the Museum of Jewish Heritage. The project was a graduate seminar in the Holocaust. In the 70s, Skokie, Illinois had the highest density of Holocaust survivors in America, per capita, the density. Many never spoke of their experiences in public, but after the attempted neo-Nazi march, famously depicted in the Blues Brothers, a small group started a small museum in a small storefront in a strip mall. with help from J.B. Pritzker, that would become, now governor of the state of Illinois, that would become this beautiful museum. Berenbaum and Maze's concept was to create a chorus of voices comprised mostly of Midwestern survivors that narrate each step of the Holocaust, from marginalization to isolation to deportation and on and on. The testimonies we used were available primarily from the USC Show of Film archives, which were created by Steven Spielberg after the making of Schindler's List. At that time, they funded the collection of these testimonies all over the world, but they had not really been used significantly. As an institution, the museum was laying out systematic proof driven by the first-person survivors' accounts of historical events. It was answering any Holocaust deniers and showing a general public how incrementally things changed for Jews and how this atrocity was perpetrated. All the while, these people speaking in the films are, quite literally, neighbors of those who lived in the Midwest. As media makers, we were drawing from the documentary tradition of journalistic integrity and sought to rigorously match images to testimony. It was our belief that all one had to do was tell the story of the Holocaust through the survivor voices, and you would touch the audience emotionally. This is a clip from films that we would create in this style. And I will just point out that the first person you will hear her name is Fritzi Fritzschall. And I have very intentionally included clips of Fritzi throughout my talk today to help you see how the techniques of storytelling evolve.
The cry, the stink, fear. It's strange. Fear gives out a certain smell. And that mixed with open bucket. I believe if I live to be 100, that smell will stay with me.
In spite of that, my then wife had the feeling, well, we'll take it. We can take it. Because none of us was aware what was going to happen. And I remember that also my wife also wrote some of these cards which were received because you could throw them to the hole, and sometimes they were picked up and people then mailed them. When it became dark, interesting enough, one of the ladies there, aware of it on Friday night, took out some candles she had prepared, was lighting the candles, was blessing the candles, expressing the prayers, to welcome the Sabbath bride. Later, I very often thought about this, how absurd life can be that, here there was a group just in that wagon of 100 people, but still riding in that car, they were blessing God and welcoming the Sabbath.
And they opened forcefully the cattle cars, and so we arrived in Auschwitz.
So you can see that we're using the testimony films along with archival imagery. There's the brief shot of the candles, which is original, but the rest is all archival material. There's around 20 of these films, and as I said, they systematically lay out the Holocaust experience through survivors' perspectives. I now want to show a clip from the closing film. So you've been through the entirety of this core exhibit, and now you'll come to a sit-down theater and you'll see the closing film. And in this clip that I have, we incorporate the opening framing, which then quickly transitions to the end. You'll see why I'm explaining that to you.
For me, genocide, I believe, stems from thinking that says my world would be better without you in it. without you and your kind.
As the struggle against genocide continues, we must realize it is a battle we cannot afford to lose.
How do we take this knowledge and turn it into action? A single individual seemingly is powerless in the face of these kinds of atrocities. The key, of course, is that a multitude of one persons is a huge force with a very big voice.
This is our planet. This is our home. And it's real. And real people have planned these horrible things, and real people have stood up against it.
The walls between races and tribes, natives and immigrants, Christians and Muslims and Jews cannot stand. These now are the walls we must tear down.
Since I'm a survivor, I must speak for those who did not survive. I must speak for those refugees in refugee camp. I must speak for all my siblings and all the people who did not survive the genocide.
We don't all have to look the same. We don't all have to speak the same, but we're all human beings. We need to care for our neighbors.
Someone took a chance to risk their life, and because of that, I survived.
I'm sure in those dark times where we saw good people. Let's be those people.
Thank you. 2009, I mean, this holds, right? This is still pretty, I tugs at me every time I see it. So you can see that we've, at the culmination of this experience, we're now opening this up and we're introducing the idea of other genocides, and we're introducing this call to action and the idea of being an upstander. You can also see that kind of from a more technical perspective, we're incorporating original interviews with B-roll, archival imagery, along with very much more sophisticated motion graphics, an original score that's helping move us all and move us with the call to action. The core exhibit, again, is predicated on the idea that proving to the audience that these events happen and that they continue to happen would propel them to action. The introduction of this concept of upstander is in the final film. Okay, you'll see how this evolves. And I wasn't sure what the audience would be today. And I have kids, and it's always cracks me up when I say, "Oh, that's Barbra Streisand." They have no idea who Barbra Streisand is. I think you all know who Barbra Streisand. Yeah. We used a similar approach focusing on survivor testimony with supporting archival materials in the Auschwitz Not Long Ago, Not Far Away exhibition, which has had over 2 million visitors in its 9-year run and is still going. It's currently in Toronto, and then I know it's already booked for another stop after that. This exhibit is exhaustive. Dana Horn, who writes about it in her book, People Love Dead Jews, which, if you're not familiar, is a page turner. She has a great line this is a very kind of Holocaust humor line here. The exhibition is relentless. After an hour and a half, I marveled that I was barely past Kristallnacht. I'm quoting her. What the hell is taking so long? I found myself thinking, alarmed by how annoyed I was. Can't they invade Poland already? Kill us all and get it over with. I mean, these are the things you can only say to Holocaust studies folks here. Page 186, by the way, if anybody is curious. This exhibit uses artifacts, media, exhibit text, and an audio guide to rigorously lay out how the Holocaust occurred. Interestingly, Recent studies of teenagers who visited this exhibit in Boston showed that the most impactful part of the experience were the artifacts. And this child's shoe was the most frequently cited impactful artifact for these kids. So all of you concerned that artifacts will no longer have a place in museums, the teenagers will tell you differently. Also, very interestingly, when prompted with a question about whether they wanted something on their phones during this museum experience, it was almost a universal no. I have a theory about this with kids and their actual very real desire to disengage from this and to engage with the physical, but still in development. You can invite me back for that one. The next most impactful piece that they cited were the films. And anecdotally, there's often concern that the videos of survivors show them as being too old. I took a group of students through the exhibit and asked them specifically about this, and they strongly disagreed with this idea. They said something to the effect that it was important to them that the survivors were old, that they had lived, and that they had lived fulfilling lives. I'm still not entirely sure what to do with that, but I did think it was very interesting given how many meetings I have been in where this idea is a major concern for museums. At the Nancy and David Wolf Holocaust and Humanities Center in Cincinnati, there was a different approach taken. Here, there was more of a focus on moving people towards upstanding behavior through the story of the Holocaust. The first part of the museum looks at the history of the Holocaust, and the second part looks at upstanders in the greater Ohio community and how they have contributed towards making their communities better since the Holocaust. It's a very wide range of individuals, and they're explored through touchscreen interactives along with projection mapped media on sculptural objects. Here, we started using much more immersive media and animation techniques along with interactive media to explore ideas held in positive psychology, the idea that we all have special character strengths and that if we tap into those strengths, we can be more impactful and fulfilled. So when you enter the museum, you encounter this graphic novel wall. And on this wall are these panels. And so kind of think mouse, and that you see these panels and you're being introduced to these little snippets of stories. There are also floating documents all over the place. You enter a sit-down theater, and the screen is 9 feet tall, probably about this height, and 40 feet wide. So imagine from that wall down there, probably to about where I am standing right here. Quite large. We transition from this graphic novel, connecting visitors that these are real people and they're going to hear from very real people. And we close the film with a framing of how we would like them to experience this exhibit. Again, I'm going to show you a clip of the beginning, we're going to dip, and then we're going to see the end of the film.
This is my forged birth certificate. This document saved my life.
This is myself, my mother, and my 2 twin sisters who perished in the Holocaust.
This document rescued my mother and I from Bergen-Belsen.
This is the passport that saved our lives.
When you leave this room, you will see what we saw and suffered a long time ago. Humanity at its worst.
You will also meet some extraordinary people. People who risk their lives to help people like us survive.
You might be tempted to ask yourself, what would I have done back then? Would I have had the courage to help, the strength to survive?
Instead, ask yourself, what can I do to help now?
How can I aid someone I know who is suffering?
How can we be the best of humanity today?
Today.
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 So these are very different techniques being used. There's animation where we've filmed these survivors over green screen and we've composited them into this environment. And these aren't testimonies. These are scripted moments with them. The narrator of this film, whom you didn't hear in these clips, is Josh Radnor from How I Met Your Mother. I might need to explain him to some people in the audience. I don't know. You can ask me after. The turning point of the museum happens in another theater. This one has 14 light boxes embedded with 8 large monitors. It's extremely sculptural and immersive. And it transitions the audience from the Holocaust narrative gallery into a place where they will learn about upstanders. And it argues that Holocaust survivors beginning to speak out about their experiences become upstanders. The museum experience culminates in the Make Your Mark wall, which you see here, where visitors reflect on their own inner strengths and join a community of others pledging to become upstanders. They also have visitors give feedback, which has been quite interesting, some of the feedback they've gotten. For us, HHC, the Holocaust and Humanities Center, is interesting because it marked a shift from the journalistic storytelling of the Illinois Core exhibit and the Auschwitz exhibit and the Museum of Jewish Heritage Core exhibit into a place where visitors are engaging with different types of media, immersive, interactive, and testimonies, with an express purpose of moving visitors towards action. The Holocaust becomes a message for people to be good, similar to what Clementine says in the Illinois film, Let's Be Those People, but much more overt. It is not the final film, it is an entire gallery, and it is framed that way from the outset. As we were working on these projects, we would continuously hear from museum folks about how important the institutions were to the survivors, and how worried the museums were about what would happen once the survivors were no longer with us. A critical experience in Holocaust education up to that point, and continues for many, is to hear from a survivor firsthand. And the concern of what happens once we lose those survivors was very present. Dimensions in testimony burst onto the scene with Pinchas. Developed by the USC Shoah Archives, it utilizes voice recognition technology to create the opportunity for a conversation with a survivor in an effort to solve, in part, the issue of how we would be able to communicate with survivors once they've passed. I did not realize that Pinchas would be outside. So here he is at the Museum of Jewish Heritage. And maybe some of you have met him already. Illinois decided to create a permanent theater, the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center, where they would feature 10 or so of their survivors who were active with the museum. Their experiences ranged from surviving Auschwitz to living in hiding in an attic in Poland. We were brought in to create films that precede these conversations with the survivor. So Pinchas, as you saw on the previous slide, and as he is outside, is on a portrait-oriented monitor. And visitors are often prompted to ask a question. But people don't really know anything about Pinchas. They see a sweet-looking grandfather, and they have no idea what the unbelievable journey he has been on. The questions could be mundane. How old are you? Where are you from? and would fail to get to the meat of his story. Tell me what it was like to say prayers while hiding in a false wall in the Warsaw Ghetto. So Illinois decided to create opening films that introduced the visitors to these people. The theater is two-layered. There are 2 layers of screens. So you can see here that this is a back layer of a screen, and this is projected on a front layer. And it creates a 3-dimensional effect. Visitors don't necessarily, it's not like you put on glasses like in the movies, but the impact is extremely dimensional and you feel it. And it creates a pretty intense emotional connection with the survivors.
I remember one action in particular. It was Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. And all the men were hiding in an attic praying. My father put his talents over his head and mine and held me as if he was trying to save me from the worst possible things by just putting that prayer shawl. When I pray on Yom Kippur, that's where I am, standing in the attic in the Warsaw Ghetto.
It's pretty dramatic and emotional. And it also provides a breadcrumb trail of things you could ask the survivors about. This experience has been extremely successful and has been duplicated in many museums. Studies have been done about the impact of the DIT experience. And what I found most interesting from a recent study I read was that when asked about the emotional response to traditional media, so this would be like the documentary films I showed earlier, using survivor voices versus the DIT experience, visitors responded differently. So with the traditional media is more negative, anger, fear, sadness. And with the DIT, it's more positive emotions, joy, pleasure, positive surprise, and relief. As a media maker, I am not remotely surprised by this. As I stated earlier, we were operating with the belief that if you use the survivor voices in the documentary films to tell the story of the Holocaust, they would connect with the audience emotionally. But we weren't looking to evoke feelings of joy. We were looking to systematically lay out the process. But as anyone who has ever met a survivor knows, once you meet them, you leave feeling a sense of empowerment. There's something about meeting someone who has been through such tragedy and has continued with their life that leaves you with a sense of power of the human spirit that is inspiring. It is bittersweet, but it is very powerful. I want to show you another clip of Fritzi, who would prove to be very impactful in this medium.
I remember the hair and the tears mingling on my face as they were shaving my head. I remember holding a pair of clogs and whatever else they gave me, and they pushed me into this area where there were thousands of shaved, dirty, uniformed, skinny women. This lady, who was so dirty and so skinny, kept staring at me. Turned out she was my mother's youngest sister, my Aunt Bella. She was the one that put her arms around me every single night while I was hungry and scared and crying. She would whisper, "Tomorrow will be better." I can hear her. Let's just live through the night. Tomorrow will be better. You'll see. She's the one. that helped me survive Auschwitz concentration camp.
In addition, studies have shown that dimensions in testimony can move visitors towards actively engaging in upstanding behavior. And interestingly, most of the visitors in the study that was looking at were non-Jews and often members of other minority groups. They cited their experience in Holocaust museums as affirmational because they allowed them to see a mirror of the intolerance that they experience as it happened to others, not to the extreme, clearly. But it strengthens them to stand up against hatred and to teach their children about the dangers of intolerance. We continued our partnership with the Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center through our participation in creating 2 virtual reality films, one focused on Fritzie. These films use virtual reality headsets in a small group setting to take visitors through the journey of a survivor's story. We saw this technology as an opportunity to take visitors to places they would not be able to go to otherwise and become totally immersed in them. We are able to see the actual house where Fritzie's grandparents lived, the house that when she returned after surviving Auschwitz became a refuge for other children who had survived and returned home to find that no one else in their family had. We are able to stand in the latrines of Auschwitz with Fritzie and hear how this place that was so filthy the guards would refuse to enter was a place of refuge for those imprisoned there, and one of the few places that they could speak freely, say a prayer, or hear news about their loved ones. And we are able to stand with Fritzie in the barracks. As you watch this clip, you are seeing one view, virtual reality. For any of you who are not familiar, you would turn around and everywhere that you turned, you would be fully immersed in this environment.
My aunt and I had the top bunk in one of these barracks. And if you look at it, it's quite small. If you put 8 to 10 women onto one of these beds, so to speak, whatever you call them here, depending on how crowded the camp was on a particular day, because transports kept coming day after day. So sometimes there were 8, sometimes 10 of us, sometimes 12 of us. We all had to sleep facing the same way when we went to bed at night, because it took up less room. Sometimes at night, somebody started a little song, and the rest would join in very quietly. Sometimes there was a prayer that was said at night for those that could pray or knew the prayer or believed. Sometimes we talked about hunger, but most of the times we shared recipes. My mother's gefilte fish was much better than your mother's gefilte fish, or how they made a kugel, or how they made a roast beef. And I, as a child, would listen because I didn't know how to cook, but I still remember a recipe. And so everybody would start laughing quietly. Everyone was so hungry. Our stomachs were growling from hunger. But we had to live in a pretend world, and we had to pretend that we were full. Every night, as I was scared and hungry and cold, my Aunt Bella put her arms around me and whispered, "Tomorrow will be better. Let's just live through the night. You'll see. Tomorrow will be better."
So I intentionally included that so you could hear that, how central that memory is for her in her narrative and how it plays out in these different technologies. You know, when we were filming this, I'd been through a lot of testimonies before. I had never heard anything about that kind of quieter moments inside the barracks like that, the tenderness almost of that moment. It was quite remarkable for me. These VR films mark a tipping point where we begin to actively explore how we render the memories of survivors. This is not storytelling with rigorous journalistic integrity. This is fully immersive, fully emotional storytelling that is looking for new visual ways to render those stories. We're using imagery from the Russian liberation footage of Auschwitz to create the pointillated images that you see that are both present and fleeting. They fill the space with their absence and point to what we imagined are the haunting memories that traveled with Fritzi every day. I remember when we were filming with Fritzi for this project, I'd worked with her, as you've seen, for over a decade by this point, and I'd watched her aging. And Fritzi's power always came from her ability to draw you in and be vulnerable. She was an unbelievable storyteller who could share her pain with you, but you never mistook her pain for weakness. Fritzi was a tough customer who was in control and who would boss anyone around. I saw it in action, believe me. But on this shoot in Auschwitz, I remember feeling like she couldn't hold the memories back in the same way. And there were even moments when I wasn't sure where she was. Was she here with us being vulnerable so that we could understand what had happened? Or was she back in Auschwitz, reliving the trauma all over again? It was something that I will never forget and I hold with me. This image is of Fritzi's son and grandchildren and family watching her VR film for the first time shortly after she passed. As a media maker, it is cherished memory that we could help preserve Fritzi for them. I want to share an anecdote about the effectiveness of these films. Illinois has used the trunk model to create a program where the VR films travel. I think it might even be coming here. It's coming here. So they send the kid out and classes are able to view it. A colleague of mine was teaching a class about the Holocaust during the semester when October 7th happened. There were, interestingly, no Jews in the class, but they said that this is not uncommon. And there was a lot of tension in the class with the events unfolding in Israel and Gaza, and a feeling that the Holocaust was too often used to justify actions of the Israeli government. The professor said that there was trepidation about using the VR films, in part because of the events that were unfolding, but also because students were familiar with VR technology from gaming and other outlets, and that they were skeptical about its use as a storytelling technology. The class watched Fritzi, and the impact was significant. It was a great bonding moment because they felt they could finally access the pain and significance of the Holocaust, and that being taken to the historical places where these events unfolded made it much more real. They had not viewed VR technology as a legitimate outlet for these types of stories, but that was likely because they had never experienced it before. VR will continue to be a storytelling path to be explored and studied. I've shown you how our media creation has evolved. And now I'm going to show you kind of where we see things moving. We're starting to see a trend emerging to tell less depressing stories about the Holocaust. And this exhibit is on the Danish rescue, was done by the Museum of Jewish Heritage, and it's specifically geared towards a younger audience. It uses illustrations by an amazing illustrator, Sveta Dorosheva, to create a childlike world that tells the story of the Danish rescue. As we enter, we meet these characters who are played by child actors, and we follow them throughout the exhibit. Remember, the survivors are too old, so we're used. When I visited the exhibit, I was struck because I quickly realized that these characters were not actual people, but they were composite characters made up of multiple survivor experiences, one of whom I had interviewed and made a film about. Those core exhibit films with the chorus of survivors came back to me, and I can't shake the feeling that this tips the balance too far. My understanding is that the Museum of Jewish Heritage struggled internally with this and that they rigorously documented where each quote came from and that this information is accessible within the exhibit or through request. I have great respect for all the folks there. We've worked with them on their core exhibit, and I know that this exhibit has been well received. I am curious to see if it impacts future modes of storytelling and what possible Pandora's box it might open up. We are also seeing Holocaust museums explore more deeply other genocides, as is done in the Dallas Holocaust Museum, among others. And we're starting to see military museums spend more time on the Holocaust, as we see at the new Holocaust Gallery at the Imperial War Museum, and even at the American Heritage Museum, where we created a new film to be projected inside a boxcar that the museum has had refurbished. We are currently creating a film, an introductory film in the Dimensions and Testimony Theater in Illinois for a Rwandan survivor. The first time ever another genocide will be featured in this technology. And this is a quote from Kizito, from the film that we're working on. And I might have to step out here. And this is, he sought out Eva Kor. Eva Kor was a Mengele twin and a survivor who helped create the Candles Museum in Indiana. And this quote is from the first time that he met Eva. And I remember the first day I went there, she hugged me. She said, "Young man, come here, sit down here." I told my story, she told her story, and I remember at the end, she said, "You see, different continent, different skin color, different agenda, but the same devil." We're anticipating that artificial intelligence will make its presence felt very soon, whether it is through the generation of images that depict moments we do not have images for, something like our memory spaces that we created in the Fritzy VR films, but further, or perhaps it will be used to narrate passages from Elie Wiesel's memoirs that were not recorded, and we will be able to hear them read in his voice. Or will that use of composite characters move and develop even further? Another trend we're seeing is struggling with how to address anti-Semitism in Holocaust museums. Curious? As Dana Horn exhaustively critiques, Holocaust institutions could raise the bar too high on what constitutes anti-Semitism. Many of the museums will gesture towards historical anti-Semitism, but show the Holocaust as an anomaly, as somehow springing up from an otherwise accepting society. But we know this is not the case. The Holocaust did not emerge from nowhere, and it was not an event that could have happened to any ethnic group. The Nazis exploited a history that was present in their society and that was well known, and they were targeting Jews for annihilation. So we are seeing increasing work and effort being put into historical anti-Semitism and contextualizing what historical tropes Hitler and the Nazis were drawing from. The Museum of Jewish Heritage exhibit does an excellent job of this in their new exhibition, along with presenting Jewish responses to the growing anti-Semitism against them. We're also seeing efforts to place Nazism and some of its governing strategy in a larger context, pioneered by the groundbreaking work at U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum on America and the Holocaust, and how Nazis were looking at Jim Crow laws to formulate their own anti-Jewish laws. I think this work needs to be explored more so that visitors can understand how political movements do not happen in a vacuum. I would argue that while one cannot understand the Holocaust without understanding the history of anti-Semitism, one cannot understand the creation of the modern state of Israel without understanding the Holocaust. For too many, like some of the students who saw the VR films I mentioned earlier, the Holocaust is used as a justification for any actions Jews in the world take, specifically actions taken by the Israeli government. And I would argue an increasingly anti-democratic Israeli government. By not exploring the significance of the formation of the modern state of Israel and the place it holds for Jews, not only as the historic homeland, but also as a place of refuge and safety, it allows misguided or simplistic ideas to take root. Like those students who stood with Fritzi in the barracks of Auschwitz, once they understand the events of the Holocaust, perhaps they will be able to untangle the historic struggles of the Jewish people from the current political acts of an increasingly autocratic Israeli government. As we well know, there are many Jews who stand forcefully behind the right of Israel to exist as a state, who also stand forcefully against the horrific acts perpetrated by Hamas on October 7th, who also stand forcefully against the unfolding events in Gaza. So as you can see, we've worked on creating media that has evolved over years. Technology has gone from screens on walls to fully immersive headsets, and from didactic films to interactive holograms. With these technological shifts, we've seen the messaging move from one of creating irrefutable Holocaust proof to one that promotes upstanding behavior. And as I stated earlier, I think that we're in a new historical moment. Growing autocratic movements, both at home and abroad, are clear harbingers of dangers ahead. I believe that Holocaust institutions need to focus more energy on teaching about historic anti-Semitism and the modern state of Israel. And in addition, I think they need to focus more on civic engagement and the strengthening of the fabric of our society in an effort to protect all citizens. Asking people to simply be good is no longer enough. We need to ask them to be citizens invested in the communal sphere and shift the focus from how the individual can be good to how can I contribute to the group. It is only through a just and secure civil society that we can ensure tolerance and safety for all. I return to this slide of my mom. She's 25 years old. I have a son who is close to that age now, and I worry for him and the world he is growing up in. Growing political movements at home and abroad, coupled with the shocking events of October 7th and its aftermath, have left many of us struggling to find a way forward. In this time, I'm reminded of the words of Rabbi Joachim Prinz in his speech on during the March on Washington with Dr. Martin Luther King. The rabbi said, quote, "When I was the rabbi of the Jewish community in Berlin under the Hitler regime, I learned many things. The most important thing that I learned under those most tragic circumstances was that bigotry and hatred are not the most urgent problem. The most urgent, the most disgraceful, the most shameful, and the most tragic problem is silence. Thank you all for the work that you are doing and the work that you will do. The world needs you all to use your voices." Thank you.